Once upon a time, in a faraway village nestled at the foot of rolling hills, lived two close friends, Boody and Mohammed. Now, these boys were known throughout the village for their thirst for adventure and their insatiable curiosity. Every free moment they had was spent exploring the nooks and crannies of their surroundings, discovering new places and unearthing hidden secrets. One day, while exploring the forest near their village, they stumbled upon an ancient stone tablet half buried in the roots of a large tree. The tablet had a faded carving of an arrow pointing towards a distant, rocky hill. Rumors had been circulating around the village about a secret cave hidden somewhere in that hill, a cave that was said to be guarded by mysterious forces and to contain a treasure beyond one's wildest dreams. Many had attempted to find it, but none had ever returned with tales of its discovery. Some whispered that only those who knew the true path could find the cave, a path revealed only to the pure of heart. Intrigued and excited, Boby and Mohammed decided to follow the arrow's direction. With their backpacks filled with provisions and their hearts filled with anticipation, they ventured deeper into the woods. As they walked, the trees grew thicker and the sunlight struggled to penetrate the dense canopy overhead, casting long shadows on the forest floor. Mohammed, the quieter of the two friends, felt a shiver run down his spine. Despite the warm weather, he couldn't shake off the feeling that they were being watched. After about an hour of walking, the path became narrow and they had to carefully navigate between sharp, pointy rocks. Mohammed, lost in thought, suddenly stumbled and before he could react, he found himself falling into a camouflaged hole concealed by overgrown bushes and fallen leaves. Boody rushed to help, pulling Mohammed out of the hole with dirt and leaves falling from his clothes. Shaken but unharmed, Mohammed brushed himself off, a mix of anger and embarrassment on his face. He looked up at Boody, his eyes questioning. Boody, understanding Mohammed's unspoken thoughts, quickly apologized, but he wasn't being completely honest. You see, earlier that morning, when they had come across the stone tablet, Boody had snuck a peek at the warning signs carved on it. Among the various signs of danger, one specifically mentioned a false path leading to a hunter's trap. And what they were currently on looked exactly like the one described in the warning. But instead of telling Mohammed and risking their adventure, he had chosen to lie. He hoped that everything would turn out fine. And so far, they hadn't encountered any traps or signs of danger. So he decided to keep his lie buried, at least for now. With a determined nod, Mohammed started to walk again, this time even more cautiously than before, his senses on high alert. The rest of the journey was filled with tense silence, the only sound being the crunch of leaves under their feet. Finally, after what seemed like hours, they reached the spot where the arrow on the stone tablet had indicated something important. But instead of finding a cave entrance, they saw nothing but a sheer rock face. Disappointment settled over them like a heavy blanket. Had they been misled? Was the treasure nothing but a myth? Just as they were about to give up, Boody noticed something strange. One of the rocks near the base of the hill looked slightly loose. As he pushed it, it gave way, revealing a dark opening. With a surge of adrenaline, they realized they had found the entrance to the cave. As they stepped inside, the scent of damp earth and something else, something metallic and ancient, filled their nostrils. The air inside the cave was surprisingly chilly, causing goosebumps to appear on their arms despite the heat outside. The walls of the cave were adorned with strange symbols and markings, each seemingly holding a secret meaning. Suddenly, Boody felt a cold dread creep up his spine. He remembered the warnings on the stone tablet about traps and dangers. He had been so sure they had avoided the false path, but now he wasn't so certain anymore. The cave seemed unnaturally silent, amplifying every little sound they made, their own breathing echoing ominously. Then, without warning, the ground beneath their feet began to tremble. Startled, they turned to see the rock face they had just come through slowly begin to crumble, sealing the entrance to the cave. Panic surged through Boody. His lie had led them into this mess. How could he have been so careless? Trapped inside with no way out, he looked at Mohammed, guilt and fear evident on his face. But Mohammed, though equally frightened, was thinking quickly. He felt around in his backpack, his fingers brushing against the small compass he had brought along, just in case they got lost. It was a habit his mother had encouraged in him, always being prepared. He pulled it out and held it in his hand, its needle spinning wildly in the sudden darkness. Then, to his relief, it began to point in what seemed to be a direction away from the entrance. Without wasting a moment, Mohammed led the way, his voice firm, projecting an air of confidence he didn't quite feel. "Follow me," he said to Boby, and they started moving deeper into the cave. The air grew colder as they went further, the temperature dropping noticeably. The tunnel they were in was narrow, forcing them to stoop as they walked. The rough, uneven surface scraped against their skin, leaving light scratches that stung. After what felt like ages, the tunnel opened up into a larger chamber. The space was dimly lit, the source of the light coming from an opening high above them. Peering into the darkness, they saw nothing but endless black. There was no exit, no indication of one at least, and then they saw it. Before them stood a massive golden statue of a mythical creature with wings outstretched as if in a perpetual state of flight. Its eyes, hollow sockets staring blankly ahead. It seemed to guard the entrance to another passageway. As they moved closer, the ground beneath their feet cracked open, revealing a glowing red pit filled with what looked like molten lava. Mohammed and Boby stared in disbelief. Could this be the fabled treasure they had come for? But if it was, why was it guarded by such a terrifying creature and a pit of fire? As if answering their unspoken question, a voice echoed through the cavern, "Beware of greed and lies." Written in a language that seemed ancient yet somehow familiar, the words floated in the air like whispers from the past. The voice spoke again, this time echoing closer, "Beware of greed and lies." The tone was a low growl that seemed to vibrate in their very bones. Mohammed and Boby were paralyzed with fear. The truth of Boby's lie hit them like a physical blow. The cave, the statue, the fiery pit, it was all a test of their honesty and their courage. And they had failed the first part of it. The air grew colder as the ground shook with tremors signaling their failure. From the corner of his eye, Boby saw fear and regret on Mohammed's face. Shame washed over him, making him realize the gravity of his actions. He had put his friend in danger because of his pride and his desire for adventure. Tears welled up in Mohammed's eyes as he looked at the growing crack in the ground, the molten lava bubbling menacingly. It was their only way out now, sealed by his lie. In a moment of inspiration, Mohammed remembered the compass. Holding it up, he saw that the needle was spinning wildly. There was no magnetic north here, only confusion. But then, as if sensing their desperation, the needle suddenly shot upwards, indicating a direction that neither of them had noticed before. There, carved into the side of the cave wall above the statue, was a small opening, almost invisible in the dim light. Taking a deep breath, Mohammed squeezed through the narrow gap. It was just large enough for him to fit, but it was too small for Boby. Through the tight tunnel, Mohammed could hear the desperate cries of his friend. Without hesitation, he pushed forward. The air grew thinner and the space became more restricted. Scrambling through the narrow passage, he felt rocks and dirt scrape against his skin, drawing blood. But he didn't care. He couldn't let Boby face whatever was coming next alone. Finally, he emerged out of the tunnel and into the blessed sunlight, collapsing onto the soft grass, catching his breath. Looking back, he saw Boby emerge, his face pale but unharmed. Together, they walked back towards the village, the weight of their adventure settling upon them. Reaching a secluded spot beneath a shady tree, Boby took out a notebook and wrote a single line. "Even if lying may save you, honesty will save you more." In Arabic. Mohammed read the words, a small smile touching his lips. He placed a hand on Booty's shoulder, and together they walked the rest of the way home, choosing the honest path all the way to the end.